Thomas Vincent was born in England in 1634 and became a Christian minister in London. A law passed in 1662 caused many Puritan ministers like him who valued the gospel and a good conscience to be ejected from the institutional Church of England. In 1665, the Great Plague struck London. It became an occasion for several of these ejected ministers to show great piety and zeal, and of God to show his providential preservation of life by protecting them from the plague as they worked in the midst of it. Vincent had become tutor of an academy at Islington, but when the plague broke out he resolved to stay in the city, visit the sick, and preach to the distressed people. He told his Christian brethren that he had carefully examined the state of his own soul and could look death in the face with comfort. He thought it absolutely necessary that the many people then dying should have some spiritual assistance, and that he could never again have such an opportunity of ministerial usefulness as now, and that he had entirely committed himself to the disposal of Providence. Supported by the ministers, who prayed for his protection and success, he began working diligently with fortitude. During the plague, he preached in some of the parish churches. The awfulness of the judgment then before the eyes of the people gave great force to his addresses, and they wanted to know where he would preach the following Sunday. Many learned the necessity of salvation and the way to heaven through the blood of Christ. He visited all who sent for him without fear, and it pleased God to take special care of his life, for those 68,596 died in London of the plague that year, including 7 persons in the family in which he lived. He continued in perfect health all the time. Thus were the promises in Psalm 91 fulfilled to the servant of God. In a tract entitled God's Terrible Voice in the City, 1667, he wrote, "He plague usually killeth within a few days, sometimes within a few hours. June, now the citizens of London are put to a stop in the career of their trade, they begin to fear whom they converse with and deal with, lest they should have come out of infected places. Now many houses are shut up where the plague comes, and the inhabitants shut in, lest, coming abroad, they should spread the infection." It was very dismal to behold the red crosses, and read in great letters, "Lord, have mercy upon us," on the doors, and watchmen standing before them with halberds, and such a solitude about those places, and people passing by them so gingerly, and with such fearful looks, as if they had been lined with enemies in ambush that waited to destroy them. He recounted the destruction that followed in the subsequent months, as well as God's design in allowing both a plague and fire, 1666, to afflict the city. He noted God's voice in the history of the 2 late dreadful judgments of plague and fire in London, and provided its interpretation, in a discovery of the cause and design of these judgments. God expects, he noted, that London should acknowledge their sins unto him.